Hello, everybody. Hope all is well. This is our day two of Gilded Age. Starting off a little, I guess can't really have a conversation if we're doing it this way, but at least thinking, kind of having yourself having like an internal conversation, I guess, and thinking, some of these questions I'm going to ask you and pose to you, kind of think about some of the answers to them. So think about this: like, have you ever moved before? I know I have. So think about some of the reasons why you may have moved. I'll let you kind of process that for a minute. Or if you haven't moved, how about you have you changed schools? Like maybe do you live in Elyria and maybe you going to Midview now? I don't know. So think about some of that. Think about like that perspective. Somebody who has moved. What are some things that you might experience? Maybe if you change schools. Maybe you are alone. Maybe you don't know anybody. Maybe you're nervous. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you're excited. I don't know. It depends on the person. Depends on what kind of person you are, I guess. Um, but I think it's natural to feel a little bit of nervousness and maybe a little bit of being scared, possibly. Even think about too if how many of you guys were born outside of the country, and you moved to the United States. Um, think about maybe why they may have moved, or why you changed schools. It could have been maybe for maybe your parents want to send you to a better school, or maybe they moved because of a job, a new job opportunity. Maybe there were some problems, some issues at your old place, and your parents wanted something maybe to kind of get you away from a certain environment. So many of these reasons I just highlighted are reasons why, at some point most of us, at some point in our ancestry, maybe a great grandparent, somebody who came from Europe or came from wherever you guys came to the United States. Many of them came for a very similar reason. Many of them came here for opportunities that they didn't have back at home. Maybe rights, maybe freedoms, maybe economic opportunities for jobs, make better money. Or maybe they just wanted adventure. So it just depends on your circumstance. But all those things are whether you came here back in the 1800s, you changed schools. Many of those feelings are still something that's a natural human instinct. Being nervous or being scared. But think about the only difference. Well, obviously, a being the time period, but two, if you're an immigrant and you were born outside the country and you were born, let's say, I don't know, in Ukraine or in Italy, think about the heightened sense of emotions you might feel because maybe some of these people didn't speak English. So now you're coming to a place that speaks English, and now you could be seen as like an outsider and having to learn. There's a language barrier. Try to imagine going somewhere, guys, like yourself going to, I don't know, Russia, and you're going to school in Russia and you don't know the Russian language. Think about your nervousness would probably be heightened. Whereas if you were just to move to a different community in this area, there's different challenges that are gonna present itself. So think about from that perspective. The brave um, opportunities that some of these men and women had to deal with, to leave everything, leave their family and friends behind for new opportunities. How much courage that would take. All right, so some of the things I highlighted. Why were some immigrants moving or coming to America? Again, as I mentioned, escaping. So this is all in your guided notes. I know I'm skipping a little bit, guys. So in your guided notes packet, it's going to be skipped a lot. You might need to scroll down or change the pages and find this, but it should say why were immigrants coming to America. So one is escaping poverty. Maybe there was no job opportunities where they came from. Famine, lack of food, like the Irish, the potato famine in the 1800s, where crops weren't growing for a variety of reasons, lack spread of disease. Plus, America was seen as job opportunities. Some of this was embellished a little bit. Again, you got to think of this as also a time period where a lot of businesses were starting to rise. So think about if you were a steamship company, a boating company, and you were trying to encourage people to move from Europe and go to America, because again, you need business, you need passengers. So sometimes many of these companies maybe embellished. They told some lies. They were saying, "Oh, go to America. The streets are paved with gold." I joke you not. That was said to try and encourage immigrants to leave. People that were desperate for food and for jobs to come to America. You know why? That would give them business. So as many of these things were, you know, embellished, and many of these immigrants, when they came here, realized that some of this stuff wasn't necessarily the truth. It could have been maybe they wanted to come here to seek religious opportunities. Jews and Catholics weren't given jobs in Germany or in many other countries in Europe. They were looked down upon. They didn't receive a lot of the same rights as other religious groups. Some of them may came here for opportunities, or maybe you wanted to escape a war, war that was going on in your country, like the Hungarian Revolution or whatever was going on at that time. All right, so obviously first stage. So how I'm choosing guys to teach the Gilded Age. There's a million different ways of teaching it. I'm just gonna kind of walk you guys through the story. So how did it all start? Well, a big part of it is through immigration. So that's kind of where we're starting here, and we're gonna kind of go through, kind of walking through the shoes in it, looking through the shoes of an immigrant, and how America will eventually build itself up. So conditions on the boat were not ideal. The boats, as you see in this picture, were packed. The average ticket was about $25 for a ticket, and in class today we're going to see some scenes from Titanic. The conditions in the boat were different depending on what class you were. There was first class, second class, and third class. If you were a first class, you were in a private section of the boat. You had space, you had privacy, you had the finer foods, drinks, the luxury, especially like on Titanic, for instance. You were living the lap of luxury on if you were first class. Even second class, I guess you had more privacy and that kind of thing. But if you were third class, that was like the poor. That was like the cheap tickets. This is what life was like for you. You were packed. You had no privacy. Um, and obviously, if you look how, just like anything else, especially with COVID going on now, if you're in a packed place like this and you're crunched together, you get no distance. If somebody's sick, somebody's going to get it, whether it's fever, a cold, flu, whatever the case might be. So in these kind of classes, the third class especially, this is where a lot of the diseases and illnesses were spread. Oftentimes, in some cases, it resulted in death. Um, so there was a big, big difference between the rich and the poor. Again, we'll show some of that in Titanic in class. On average, again, depending on the boat and technology at this time, because this is kind of a wide area between the mid 1800s through the 1900s. Obviously, technology is going to improve as we go, but depending on the boat, depending on the era, the average time that the journey would take on the boat would be 6 to 12 days. Obviously, in the 1900s, more increased technology. You're looking at more 6 days. If you're looking at more of an old rundown, old technological ship, you're looking at more 12 days. Plus, it depends on weather and that kind of thing. So vocabulary terms, something called steerage. This is, again, third class. This is for the poor. Something called steerage is the bottom of the boat where people stayed. Horrible conditions. You were there was little air ventilation. There was no open windows down there. It was hot. It was steamy because that's where all the machine equipment would be. It was very loud from the engines going. There wasn't a whole lot of ventilation for air to go. Again, you were packed into these bunks or into these rooms. Often, again, you had no privacy, so you wouldn't have your own. You and your family wouldn't have your own room. You would share it with other families. So that kind of a big deal. Think about again too. Like if you were going on vacation, you'd be staying with another family. How awkward that would be. So again, it did vary based upon what class you were in. So here's showing you guys a picture of steerage. You see these bunk beds, multiple in here. So these families would get a bunk to sleep on, and you'd be sleeping next to other families. You had your water. This is where you'd eat, all in one big open room. Same thing. This would be another example of something called steerage. You have your little bunk, little space you'd sleep in, little table here. There'd be a bathroom in here too. So think about bathroom too. Think about that. How disgusting that would be. You're in a room with multiple families, no privacy, and you have a bathroom in there. So if you did number one or did number two, again, there's no ventilation down there too. So if you puked or you went poo, how disgusting that would be, all being in that room. Kind of showcasing. Here's the bed right here, and there's the toilet. So try to imagine like you're falling asleep, you're sleeping, all of a sudden somebody next to you gets up to go to the bathroom, and you're right in your face. Pretty disgusting. Anyway, All right. So one of the things we need to talk about is old immigrants versus new immigrants. So I know on the slide it says new, but old immigrants were people that came before 1870. They, for the most part, if you came before 1870, you were white, you came from England, you spoke English, you were Protestant. Basically, you fit in. You looked like everybody else. You had no very little problems blending into kind of what was going on. Now, new immigrants are those that came after 1870. 1870 to 1920, about 20 million total came here between that time period. Most of these immigrants came from Southern and Eastern Europe. So this is where it's going to be different. Um, many of these individuals are going to be Jews. They're going to be Catholics. Again, very different from the old immigrants. The old immigrants were Protestants. So again, old immigrants were Protestants. New immigrants were Jews and Catholics. So just in terms of religion, they were different, different beliefs, different systems of beliefs. Now, these Europeans are going to be white, but what are they going to have? They're going to have speaking issues, meaning language issues, language barriers. Again, old immigrants came from Britain who spoke English. Many people from Southern Eastern Europe spoke Italian or Ukrainian or Russian or wherever else you may have came from. But long story short, they didn't speak English. So think about that. They're gonna not fit in as well. They're gonna not blend in. You can kind of tell in terms of fashion, in terms of how they speak. You know if somebody is from here or not. So this is gonna be very difficult for them. Hundreds of thousands will also come from Mexico, the Caribbean, and China as well during this time. We'll get to that later on. As I said before, they looked and they sounded different than the natives, those that were born in the United States. So they're going to stand out a lot more. And some called nativism. We'll get to more of that later on. But nativism is the sense of belief that it's a movement to ensure that natives, people that are born in America, receive better treatment than immigrants. Many of these natives were resentful towards immigrants. They felt like the immigrants were taking jobs away, bringing crime with them to the United States. We'll talk about that later on as well. But many of these immigrants had a difficult time with racism and being resisted against, being picked on. Think about this: is it any? How can I word this? Think about what's going on today in our world with the United States. You see the news all the time. About people are being, pro-America, and anybody on the outside are not necessarily welcome here. Again, some beliefs of that nature. So many of these nativist beliefs are something that's been happening for hundreds of years. It's not new, but something that's been happening for a long, long, long time. Where natives that are born in a certain area, they are resentful to new people coming here. So as you guys see here in this cartoon here. This is 1888, a cartoon about American businessmen encouraging immigration for cheap labor, which hurts Americans. So this is Americans here, family, they're homeless because a business wants immigrants. See their bags, they're running in to get jobs. And now the Americans are left out. So this was something that, propaganda for natives to really push the anti-immigrant attitudes during this time. Hold on, buddy. I'll be there in a second. The new immigrants, where you coming from? Where would you blend in? Where would you come into America at? Something called two ports, either Ellis Island or Angel Island. Ellis Island was more popular. This was in New York Harbor, where most European immigrants came to get processed. You'd go through Ellis Island, you go through different things. We'll talk about that more in our assignment, as I'll get to here in a minute. But most people came in Ellis Island. Now, if you were Asian, you came from China, Japan, somewhere in that one of the Asian countries. Most of them came in at Angel Island in San Francisco. But many of them are going to experience culture shock, and we'll get to melting pot here in a minute. So there's two different theories: melting pot versus salad bowl theory. Like America is composed of various immigrant groups. They call us the melting pot. That all these different immigrant groups took their religious, their cultures, and we kind of all blended into what it means to be an American. Like my wife's Ukrainian, her family's Ukrainian, so they have their Ukrainian traditions. Some things we stole from other immigrant groups, like Germans. We took, obviously some of the foods, but we took some of the, kindergarten, some of the holidays. Italy, same thing, food, and a variety of other traditions that we took from them and kind of put it into our culture of what we celebrate today. All right. So anyway, that is it. You are going to be completing an Ellis Island WEM quest.